At 3:11 in the morning, a backhoe was idling in my driveway like a dragon with heartburn. Not exactly the kind of wake-up call you want when you've poured half your soul into fixing up an old place. The bucket was hovering just inches from the cedar shake roof I'd spent 6 months restoring by hand, and the whole house was trembling from the hydraulic hiss and diesel rumble. I stumbled outside in my pajamas, slippers flapping, heart pounding. And there she was, this woman in a tennis visor and pearls, clutching a clipboard like it was the Constitution, screaming over the engine noise. "You have 48 hours, or we flatten this pioneer hovel," she shouted, stabbing her pen at my cabin like she was personally offended it existed. The demolition guy looked like he'd done 3 shifts in a row and still had laundry to fold. Just gave me this half-hearted shrug, like midnight demolitions were just another HOA perk, right up there with wreath policing and splash pad drama. Meanwhile, porch lights started flicking on all around, faces pressing up to windows. Welcome to Sycamore Glen at 0:30. I just stood there, blinking, clutching my coffee mug like a talisman, trying to wrap my brain around the fact that my quiet, boring, spreadsheet-filled life was melting down before sunrise. That engine kept idling, the yellow paint practically glowing under the streetlights, like it was daring me to blink first. I should probably introduce myself. My name's Owen Rath. 38, work-from-home data analyst, professional mind-my-own-business guy. I collect old maps, say no worries, even when I'm very much worrying, and honestly, I prefer quiet weekends to this kind of high-octane drama. The place at the center of all this chaos was my little cabin, built back in 1869 by the Blackwell family, one of the first in the county. Most people saw a rotting shed with a roof that might take flight in a good wind. Me? I saw history. I'd spent a whole year restoring it, sweating through evenings and weekends, learning to split cedar shakes from YouTube videos, and this 70-year-old craftsman named Dale, who smelled like turpentine and told the same joke twice. I mixed my own lime wash from some dusty recipe, hunted down old square head nails 3 states away, and chased down the exact technique to recreate those wavy antique window panes. It was just 800 square feet, but every board was a story, and every story a battle. Then there's Sandra Withers, HOA president, local legend, visor apparently fused to her scalp, and a whistle on a lanyard she actually used to get people's attention. 7 years running unopposed because, frankly, no one had the guts to try. Sandra loved bylaws the way some people love hot sauce. The more, the better, slathered on everything. And from the minute I started working on that cabin, she acted like I'd declared war on her beige, perfectly manicured kingdom. At first, it was petty. A notice taped to my door. Unauthorized rustic aesthetic, citing bylaw section 7-12F. Funny thing, there is no section 7-12F. I checked twice. When I pointed that out in the next board meeting, Sandra declared I was disrupting proceedings and fined me $50. Next up, she fined me for a non-conforming fence height. Joke's on her, I didn't even have a fence, just a little split-rail border around my herb garden. She measured it with a novelty yardstick shaped like a giraffe and claimed it violated the 48-inch minimum. The giraffe said my fence was 18 inches. I can't make this up. She said my rails were treated lumber, which was banned. They were cedar. I had receipts. Sandra squinted, said receipts could be forged, and wrote me up anyway. One morning, I'm making coffee and see her crouched in my thyme plants, photographing them with a tablet, muttering invasive like it's a crime scene. I step outside and she pops up, saying there have been complaints about non-native, aggressive vegetation. My thyme was from the garden center 4 miles away. Tag still said, made in Oregon. Didn't matter. I got another violation. Then came the flyers. Local man operates frontier cosplay attraction. They read, in Comic Sans no less. Expect bonfires and goats. Possible health code violations. I didn't have goats. I didn't want goats. I definitely wasn't running an attraction, but the rumors took off. Mrs. Chun from 2 doors down actually asked me what I'd charge for admission. Next, I get summoned to an emergency board meeting. Sandra, plus her 2 favorite minions, vote unanimously that my cabin is now an attractive nuisance. She pronounced it like she'd invented the phrase, smug enough to give you a toothache. I tried explaining the history, but Sandra cut me off with a blast from her whistle. Not negotiable, she snapped. Your little log cabin fantasy ends now. 2 days later, A certified letter lands in my mailbox. 48 hours to demolish or HOA will proceed for safety. It had this ridiculous eagle stamp she'd obviously ordered online, but Sandra was just getting warmed up. She called code enforcement 3 times in 2 days, each time pretending to be me. Third time, she claimed I'd found black mold in quantities biblical. That was her phrase. I got the call recordings. She also claimed I'd reported structural collapse and possible rodent infestation. None of it was true. When code enforcement finally sent someone out, they found absolutely nothing wrong, so Sandra pivoted again. She hired a demolition crew, prepaid them $4,000 out of HOA funds, then filed a dangerous structure complaint with the county. Except she sent it to Parks and Recreation, not code enforcement, and attached a photo of a random log cabin from a History Channel documentary. Wrong state, wrong century, wrong everything. Then, in a late-night crusade, Sandra trespassed onto my property and sprayed a neon orange X across my hand-hewn front door, the door I'd spent 3 weeks restoring, matching the original milk paint color. She even cut the line to my security camera. Joke's on her, I had a backup camera. Everything was time-stamped, cloud-synced, and ready for prime time. Now, I'm not the confrontational type, but I know how to research. So I drove to the county archives, met this librarian named Margaret, cardigan in July, deadpan sarcasm sharp enough to slice bread. I explained the situation. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Let me see what we have." 20 minutes later, she wheeled out a cart full of deeds, maps, and old file folders. We found the original property deed from 1868, the tax records, and, jackpot, the State Historic Registry. Turns out, my little eyesore had been on the State Historic Register for 5 years, thanks to a 4th grader who spotted a carved signature above the door on a field trip. J. Blackwell, 1872. The State Historical Society confirmed. This cabin was one of only 3 surviving settler structures in the county. Legally protected, untouchable. Sandra hadn't just threatened my home. She'd threatened a state historic site. Margaret made copies of everything and labeled the folder Evidence for Mr. Wrath versus Tyrant. Bless her. I filed for an emergency injunction with a lawyer who specialized in property rights. He took the case on contingency, said, "This is the most clear-cut thing I've seen in 15 years. I called the State Historic Preservation Office, and the woman on the phone said, "Hold, please," in the tone of someone about to ruin a tyrant's whole week. By sunset, my driveway looked like a scene from a true crime show. State preservation officer with a badge, a county sheriff, and the backhoe operator who kept repeating, "I'm just here for the job, man." The preservation officer checked her tablet, looked at the cabin, and said, "Yup, it's registered." The sheriff inspected Sandra's fake seal and just shook his head, dead tired. "Ma'am," he said, "you don't get to invent government. That's not how any of this works." At 6:47 p.m., the injunction came through, like gospel. The backhoe backed out, beeping all the way, driver looking like he'd seen a ghost. Then the investigation exploded. The state preservation folks launched a full review. They contacted the Attorney General. Meanwhile, the HOA brought in a forensic accountant because suddenly, some board members were real interested in where the money had gone. The accountant, Gerald, CPA, ceramic frog collector, dead serious, found everything. Sandra prepaid the demo company $4,000. She bought 500 unsafe structure stickers online for $180, 3 different fake government seals, and, my favorite, a walnut gavel engraved Wrath of Withers. $93 plus shipping. Gerald highlighted it in yellow, wrote seriously in the margin. The Attorney General's office sent Sandra a polite letter to come in for an interview. She ignored it. The next one wasn't so polite. She hired a lawyer. Then came the showdown. Next HOA meeting, Thursday night, clubhouse packed. Not just the regulars. It was every homeowner who'd ever gotten a violation, fined for mailbox color, or just wanted front row seats. You could feel the tension. People brought popcorn. No joke. I set up my laptop, loaded with sheriff's body cam footage, security cam clips of Sandra spray painting my door, the works. Sandra strutted in, visor gleaming, carrying her custom gavel like a scepter. She froze when she saw the crowd. I played the footage, Sandra, caught on camera, snipping my wires, muttering about rogue pioneer vibes. The place hissed. Suddenly, Everyone who'd been scared of Sandra for years found their voice. The sheriff walked in mid-agenda, served her with papers. She tried to bang the gavel, and it snapped in half. Poetic. Chef's kiss. She was removed from the board on the spot, fined $23,000 for misuse of funds, ordered to reimburse every penny, and sentenced to 200 hours of community service at the county museum, under Margaret the librarian's watchful eye. The judge, zero patience, said, "There's no but wait. You targeted a protected historic site with fake documents and misappropriated funds. You're lucky this isn't criminal." Sandra's face turned stop sign red as she melted into the defendant's chair, visor slipping, pearls clicking. The whole room was silent, except for the sound of justice finally landing. You ever see karma hit that hard? Would you have fought back, or just let the bulldozer win? Tell me your take. Is justice served when the rules finally bite the rulemaker? Drop your stories or HOA nightmares below, and if you believe in standing up for what's right, even when you're outnumbered, let's hear it.